everyone. Welcome to Switchblade Sisters Social Club, the true crime podcast where two friends exploit their worst fears for your entertainment.
You're welcome.
I'm Dee, a writer and podcaster.
And I'm Isla from Criminally Good Books, a true crime and crime fiction bookshop in York.
Follow us on all the socials.
Except for X, obviously.
Or have a look at our website, switchbladesisterssocialclub.com.
Check them out for all our latest episodes, events, deals, and other weird stuff.
Listeners' discretion advised. Hello.
Hello.
So, we did that thing where we just had an hour and a half long gossip before we even pressed record. But to be fair,
we're not meant to tell people that, are we?
Well,
yeah, we did.
I think we like to divide our gossip session. Our recording sessions are definitely combined with our catch-up sessions.
Yeah.
And then I like to think we've now got it down to a skill. What parts of our catch-up gossip is really of no interest to anyone else?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And what to save for on the podcast. So we're nearly at the end of season 6. I don't know how that has happened, but it has happened.
It's happened due to your seriously controlling use of your own brain in doing a lot of research.
Do you know what it is? It's because I enjoy the research for this podcast so much, and because I have ADHD, that quite often it's the thing that I use to procrastinate doing other stuff. So for me, I procrastinate a lot, but always doing something else that also needs to get done. It's how I justify it to myself. Do you know what I mean? It's stuff that needs to get done. Whether it needs to be done at all urgently or ever is another question. So I love it. We will be having a bit of a season break. We will be having some debriefs in between.
Yeah, I love your debrief.
Have a weekly debrief, which, if you remember from our last season break, is just a shorter episode with just me talking about a case that, for whatever reason, doesn't lend itself well to our normal format.
Larger one.
Yeah. But speaking of a slightly different format, today is the first of a two-parter that will round off our season. So next week will be the last episode of the season, and we are doing a two-parter. But I'm not going to tell you what the case is just yet. I'm going to start off, because you can imagine it's a two-parter, it's a biggie. So I'm going to start off by telling you about Tracy Felstead. And you jump in whenever you think, because you will have heard of this case. I would be surprised if anyone in this country has not heard of this case.
Okay.
So Tracy Felstead. She was a teenager when she took her first job running a counter at a shop in Camberwell Green in South London in 1999. Just 2 years later, she was about 19 years old. A routine audit in this shop showed an inexplicable shortfall of £11,500 in her till, and she was immediately blamed. She was told the software system doesn't make errors. You have obviously either made a mistake or stolen this.
Okay, I know this.
April 20, 2002, she was hauled into Kingston Crown Court where, despite all of her desperate denials, and bear in mind, well, at this point, she's a little bit older, but she's like 21, she was convicted of theft and false accounting. Here's a quote from her. "I denied any wrongdoing because I haven't done anything wrong," Felstead later told the official inquiry. He even refused, bless her, to apologize in court because she was insisting on her innocence. So even after she was charged, she was like, "I'm not going to show remorse because I didn't fucking do it." So the judge then accused her of stealing from old age pensioners and sent her to a young offenders institution for 6 months.
Oh, God.
So this ordeal was horrific.
And there'll be people there that had actually done serious stuff.
Yeah. Felstead's family scraped together the £11,500 they were told that she had owed, and they paid it to her employer. But Tracy went to jail anyway.
Did the employer, who I know who they are, did they take the money?
Yeah. So they took the money at the time. This was a woman who'd been working with them for a good few years. So they obviously trusted her, whatever, up until that point. This was out of character. She was denying it the entire time. And I know that doesn't necessarily mean she's innocent, but, you know, when you look at the context, I feel like at this point, even if she had done it, if she's paid it back, gone to jail and been threatened and like put the fear of God in her and that, you know, if she's gone to court and everything, does she need to do jail time at that young age? I don't know. Anyway, so Tracy then was fuming when she learned that they raised this money and paid them because she was like, why are you paying them? I haven't taken it.
Yeah, because it looks like an admission of guilt in a way.
Yeah, you know, and you could see the family were like, look, we'll just fucking give you the money to make this go away. It doesn't even matter whether it's, you know, her parents
Happens
probably
or not.
trying to spare her. Even going to court is traumatic, right? So Tracy's health and her confidence and her everything just collapsed. She lost her job. She lost her standing in the community. Within weeks, she found herself at Holloway Prison in chains and under suicide watch. One prison report notes that she was so distraught that doctors had to sedate her. And years later, she recalled how the investigators had been, in quotation marks, cruel and very, very aggressive to her, a young girl, leaving her completely bewildered.
Traumatized.
Yeah. She says everything done to her was, in quotation marks, based on a series of lies. And I'm going to say that without the quotation marks because it's true that it was based on a series of lies. After just 3 months behind bars, Tracy Felstead was released on license, so kind of like on probation, but her life was shattered. She lost her home, her relationship. She was tormented. She was basically, I think, having PTSD because she describes flashbacks.
And ostracized in the community because people wouldn't believe her.
She still sleeps with the bedroom door open, saying, because she would have been traumatized from the actual event and then from time in prison, you know? I can't have doors closed in my house. It takes me back to that sound of the prison door slamming. I mean, that must be something that is fairly common to be traumatized in that way. Coming out of prison, even if you had committed the crime, you're still going to be traumatized from time in prison. But to be going through that, knowing that you don't deserve to be there, it's got to be even fucking worse for your head. In her own words, looking back on 2 decades since her trial, from 26th of April 2002, the next 20 years of my life were effectively ruined. So sad. This should tell you now that this case does not even have a murder in it, and it's still one of the most like traumatizing, upsetting ones because the amount of people whose lives were destroyed by this case, directly, indirectly, and so forth, is vast. So Tracy Felstead had tried to take her own life. She was on suicide watch, and it took her nearly 19 years for justice. In April 2021, the Court of Appeal finally quashed her conviction on the grounds that the employer's computer evidence was unreliable, that it took 20 years for them to realize that a computer can make a mistake. It's not rocket science, is it? Like, this is the bit that I'm stuck on. Like, we all know that computers have bugs and all sorts. Like, it just seems so obvious. And especially if you have loads of people complaining about the same problem, why at no point were they like, maybe there's a bug, you know? But by this point, when her conviction was quashed, remember, she'd spent 6 months in jail, or a few months in jail, 3 months in jail, but then she'd come out. So she's been out of jail for a long time. It's not like she was still in prison and finally got released or whatever. But that jail time was not obviously the most traumatic part of this whole thing. So even though it's almost 20 years later and she's 39, she has a family, she's got a career, every part of that was fractured by this trauma.
Yeah.
And she only received like interim payments and she's still awaiting full compensation for the nightmare inflicted on her, the amount of money she lost, her well-being, the impact on her well-being, all of this stuff. She told the inquiry, I will never get over what was done to me. So this is one of the cases.
I've got a few books on this.
Yeah, so I think you know what I'm going to be talking about, but it's one of those cases that makes you question everything. Your banking app, your tax return, AI. We were just talking about the wonders of AI, the downsides of AI, and just general internet stuff and, you know, our reliance on technology combined with our susceptibility to human error. It's a scary combo, right? Because today's story, it's not about a serial killer. It's about a spreadsheet and it's about a computer system. And it's about what happens when an institution decides that the computer must be right, even when real human lives are falling apart. So it's basically the opposite of that Little Britain sketch. Computer says no. It's like computer says yes, and computer must be right. So today I'm telling you the story. Do you want to guess? I know you know.
The post office scandal.
Yeah. The UK post office Horizon scandal, which has been described as one of the most widespread miscarriages of justice in British legal history. I mean, both of us are already welling up because, like, honestly, it's horrendous.
I've watched the TV, I don't know if it's a film, like the series on TV, like the dramatization of it. And I was like, I cannot.
I was
These
talking to someone
people,
today about it, how sometimes it needs a filmmaker or an investigative journalist or someone who wants to push forward and bring a story to light for it to finally get the attention and the resolution it needs and deserves.
because if you think about the post offices, like loads of them have closed down. Like in York, there's like one that's under threat and all this kind of stuff. It's just, and then you've got people, it's not just like elderly people going to get their pensions, it's like a sense of community. And for some of those people, that's the only face-to-face contact they have with someone. So the people
Yeah.
working there are like, in the most part of your community, pillars of society. To have that questions,
I
you
never
know.
worked in a post office, but I did work. I feel like it's got a similar vibe. I worked at a doctor's surgery.
Yeah, so you've got the same type of people. Like everyone goes to the post office, regardless. It's not just like elderly people going to pick up their pension. It's like you're posting a letter. You're doing like, filling out a driving license form, like driving license paperwork and all that kind of stuff. Passport forms.
Much of the reason why a lot of them are closing down is obviously because you can do a lot of this online or, even ordering delivery and this, that, and the
Yeah.
other. But it used to be where you got all of your passport forms, driving license forms, road tax, a lot of other taxes. Obviously, the little old ladies getting their pension, but a lot of your benefits would come through the post office, all the posting or whatever, but also your stationery, because it
Yeah.
always have a shop. It's quite often in a one stop or a convenience store as
Or
well.
WH Smith's or TG
Yeah.
Jones, whatever it's called.
So similar to when I worked at the doctor surgery, as you said, for a lot of people, it's one of the few interactions they have with another human. And so like I remember having my regulars at the doctor surgery, and they weren't always the ones that had appointments. They would just make regular stops into the doctor surgery to either claim to drop something off or pick something up or do a sample or whatever. But most of the time, they really just wanted to have a
Say
little
hi
chat.
to someone.
Yeah, because a lot of people, it was one of their main forms of interaction. It is like
Yeah.
one of the hubs, the doctor surgery, the post office, especially in smaller villages. It's quite often the hub of one of the hubs of the community. Like you said, a lot of them are closing down a lot because of this stuff can be done online. And, even people in the UK, our younger listeners are probably like, you had to get a form, a hard paper copy of a form from a vet place in a location. You couldn't just like download it from the internet or fill it out online. Like, yes, we had to do that. Yeah. So it's the post office scandal. I wanted to do this case for so long, but I wanted to wait because I wanted to get as much resolution as possible.
And there's still stuff coming out,
Yeah.
isn't there?
And now I realize that's going to take years and years. These poor people are going to continue suffering while they try to get some justice. But a lot of the legal stuff has been wrapped up now. So that's why I want to cover it.
I'm really interested in this because I haven't looked at anything over the last few months.
Well, this is what I've noticed with cases that are in our living memory is that we have so much knowledge about it, but it might not be so cohesive. And then we've got missing bits, and then we don't often know how it wrapped up necessarily. So this is why, because it's such a big case that's been going on for so many years. Like I said, I doubt people our age and older will definitely, I doubt you'll meet someone that doesn't know about it. So I wanted to just give a cohesive telling of it. At the same time, it's so big that it is a two-parter. And I really want to focus on the people behind this case because there are some legends that help bring this along. And then just all the people that were so badly affected. And like I said, it's not just the people that were accused of stealing because of this faulty, it's all their family members, their direct family, their kids, their partners, but also their parents that try to help get them out of it. They're the communities that lost their faith in that hub, in that person, because you can imagine there's a lot of trust lost. Some communities were like, absolutely, Jan from the post office would never do that. Let's stand behind her. Others are going to be like,
oh, she did that.
Dick. Yeah. It's just insanity. It really is. So it's still ongoing, but it's been unfolding for so long and so slowly. These things take so much time. In the meantime, the victims are just meant to like carry on with their lives, I think a lot of people almost forgot how it started. So I wanted to go back, but basically between 2000 and 2013, the post office prosecuted hundreds of sub-postmasters. And I'll go more into the the structure of the post office, Royal Mail, etc. But a sub-postmaster is what they call the local branch operator. It's basically a franchise. So
Yeah.
that could be a standalone post office on its own, or it could be a counter in a newsagent or a shop, or sometimes in a bakery or whatever. But basically, they prosecuted hundreds of sub-postmasters based on accounting data from a computer system called Horizon. And do you want to guess how many people were convicted?
So I thought you just said 100 and something.
No, I said hundreds of sub-postmasters were prosecuted. How many do you think were convicted?
I don't know.
950.
Fucking hell.
950. So nearly 1,000 sub-postmasters were wrongly convicted between 1999 and
But
2015.
did they not think to themselves?
This is what I mean. It's like there's so many points here where it's like criminal.
But even to the point that, A, a lot of our staff are thieves. Like, are we doing something wrong with our training?
Yeah,
Or B, there must be something wrong here.
that's it. And remember, 950 people across the country all complaining about the same fault in the computer system. So what you think all of these people discovered a loophole that is managing to make them steal money. So nearly 1,000 sub-postmasters wrongly convicted, all based on this faulty data, which we now know is faulty, from the Horizon accounting system. Of those, around 236 people were sent to prison for offenses. So offenses like theft, fraud, false accounting, which we now know they didn't commit. And sentences varied so widely. So again, some didn't get prison time, some got short custodial terms, some got longer imprisonment, weeks and months.
And also I read, and I'm sure you go into it, but some people pleaded guilty just so that they could not go to prison.
Loads of people paying the money back because they thought they must have made a mistake, Like if I had a till, you've got a shop. If your till didn't line up one week and it was like £10 out, you'd be like, do you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to put that £10 in for my purse and just.
Yeah, it's like £10 at the end of the day. It's like
it's not worth
my
trying
time
to go through line by line and figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then imagine the following week, it's like £30. You're like,
I know.
And then the next week, it's not. It actually shows in your favor. And you're like, okay, well, maybe I'm making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then suddenly the following week, it's like $3,000 out and you're not the boss. Like you've got to report to your licensed, what do you do at that point? So some people try to cover all of these things for as long as they physically could.
Or they might think it's their staff, as well.
Yeah. There's lots of reasons why people would do this. And remember, at the same time as them having the problems, they're being told there's nothing wrong with the system. There's a fault with either you, your staff, your system, or whatever, but the computer is not making a fault. So how do you cope with that? So many of these convictions have since been quashed.
Mm-hmm.
But behind these numbers, which are staggering anyways, there are bankruptcies, prison sentences, families, relationships destroyed, people losing their homes, losing their reputations, having to move. There are 13 suspected suicides linked to the scandal.
I didn't realize it was that many.
13. And I've heard this sick argument that those people would have been damaged and perhaps would have gone down that route anyways. Whether that's true or not does not matter. This will 100% have contributed significantly.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I would argue, I wouldn't be surprised if this was like one of the main, I won't say deciding factors, but one of the contributors that led to the downfall of everything else in their life around them.
I couldn't know it.
Right? Because again, it's not just that they lost their job or their business, their self-employed business, it's their reputation, their house, their relationship with their families, their kids, and so forth.
Standing in the community. I think that's a massive thing, like being right in the middle of,
And having to deal with a court case. I had one time where I thought I might have to go to court, and it was because a woman hit my car. And I shit myself about going to court.
Even though you knew that someone had hit you.
She'd hit me in the back. And I, in the end, agreed. Speaking of people have different motivations for admitting guilt or doing things that make them look like they're covering up their guilt. I agreed. I don't remember the legal term, but I agreed to pay for her damage without admitting fault because I didn't want to go to court. In my rationale.
But she hit you.
Yeah. But she was fighting it so much. And the person, my solicitor, luckily my insurance was covering that side or whatever. my solicitor said she's fighting it. So it will go to court because you're also denying that you're to blame. And my solicitor said that I wasn't to blame because, basically if someone hits you in the back, it's almost 99% of the
It's
time.
them. It's not you reversing into them.
And it wasn't. It was on a roundabout. So whatever. She'd gone through a red light. It was bonkers. But she had decided to fight it. And my solicitor told me, you're going to have a court date, which will be in 6 months to a year's time. So I was like, great, that's 6 months to a year of, I know the way my mind works. And she said, you will be cross-examined. And I just thought, I'm going to be on the dock in a court being cross-examined. And I can just sign this document and make it go away. And so I did, and I don't regret that. And it bothers me that made it look, that I was a little bit guilty.
But a lot of people who do that because they won't want the repercussion, like they won't want to have to go to court.
The alternative was a year of waiting and anxiety, and then standing up and being cross-examined by a lawyer in court.
Yeah.
Like some people, maybe that's a bit more normal for them. I've never done that. I could not, I was going through a divorce as well at the time. I was like, I don't need, do you know what I mean?
I don't need another court. I don't need another court case.
My point being, I do totally understand the logic of like accepting some kind of plea deal or paying a fine to avoid a charge or whatever, even if you're innocent, because you have to weigh up the impact, the long-term impacts on your life and your mental well-being and your finances or whatever, versus like the principle of being proven right, which should be great. But like day to day, that's not the most pressing thing. I've lost everything, but at least on paper, I'm innocent. You know what I mean? You have to weigh up. Yeah. So, like I said, 13 suspected suicides linked to the scandal. Dozens more people reported suicidal thoughts. Some attempted to take their own lives, but didn't succeed in doing so. So this isn't just an IT glitch, though. It starts as that. It's also institutional failure at scale and then a massive cover-up operation. So it's just, like I said, criminal on many different levels. So I want to rewind and I want to explain a little bit more the sort of structure of the Royal Mail, because I was like, Royal Mail?
Please do, because I don't know.
Yeah. So guess who set up the Royal Mail?
Was it someone that was either a king or a queen? Was it Queen Victoria?
The year was 1516. Do you know who is the king? And I don't know dates at all, but of royal family.
What's the year?
1516.
Was it Henry's father?
No, it was actually Henry VIII.
Oh, it was Henry VIII. I thought it would be his father.
So 1516, Royal Mail was established by Henry VIII as a state courier service for government correspondence. So initially just for Parliament and official business. And then 1635, the postal service opened up to the general public under Charles I. Then in 1969, so more than 330-ish years later, the post office becomes a public corporation under the Post Office Act 1969. What that means is that the post office operates the post office branches while the Royal Mail handles the mail delivery. So they kind of split it up. So the shops, the post office branches, are one company, and then the other company is responsible for actually picking up that mail, delivering it wherever.
Right. Okay. I understand that now.
And I can only guess they did that for financial and tax reasons.
There is no other reason.
In 1999, there was the introduction of this Horizon.IT system to computerize branch accounting. So basically, what they wanted was to have, this formalized, standardized system across all the branches, right? They didn't want to have like Jan in the little village doing everything on Post-it notes and then someone else sending in like Excel spreadsheets, but in their own way. You know what I mean?
You could see that there would be potential fraud. Like it lends itself to corruption. Even if it's not happening, it's going to seem potentially easier to do naughty things.
Yeah. And also you can imagine that at HQ, at Post Office HQ, they want to be able to analyze like, how much is this one costing us? And for the postmasters as well, right? They have these franchises. Do they want to look at opening another one? How much are they making? There's a million reasons why this in theory is great, right? There's obviously downsides of like trying to get that large an organization and that many people onto a system where they're either not very tech savvy or they have their own systems or whatever. But at the end of the day, they were kind of told, you got to get on board. You can't be a post office sub-postmaster unless you're using the system. And we will give you loads of training and there'll be a helpline. So in 2013, so after they had split, in 2012, they split officially the Royal Mail and the post office. So the post office is basically in charge of the retail element and the Royal Mail in charge of the postal delivery system. And then in 2013, the Royal Mail was also privatized by the UK government. And this is the confusing bit. Royal Mail is privatized. The post office remains state-owned. But anyways, they're companies, they got big wigs up at the top that are making money off of the little ones, right? That's the same regardless of the financial structure, So as early as 1990s, the post office began planning a national computer system to digitize accounts across thousands of post office branches at a time where this wasn't that normal, right? The government launched the Pathway Project, which was intended to create a network linking all of the post offices as well. So it would connect them all so that they would deliver benefits, pensions, and so forth better. Because, all of these different post offices, depending on the size, would offer different services. Like I remember at my post office in Chiswick, you used to be able to go there to have your passport photos taken by
a person. Yeah.
And then, to make sure they met the requirements. So, because it was expensive, if your passport photo got rejected, you had to pay again to apply for your passport, as well as for the photos and whatever. And then I moved, and then that next post office didn't take the photos, but you could pay for them to check the form to make sure you completed it correctly, which was also worth it because it was fucking complicated. So they award the contract to build this system. They must have had a few years of consultations. What do we want from the system? What do we need it to be able to do? And they award it to ICL. And then in 1998, Fujitsu acquires ICL.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because I didn't think it was ICL. I was like, what's that? Okay.
Yeah, so Fujitsu.
And that is it's Japanese, isn't it? It's a massive Japanese.
It did make me, I'm not going to lie, really hate Fujitsu. And I don't think I have any Fujitsu products, but you can guarantee I will never be promoting Fujitsu. So in 1996, Horizon was piloted in some of the post office branches. You can imagine they do little test runs. And by around 1999 to 2002, it was rolled out nationally. And it became the core accounting system across the post office network. Now, here's the crucial detail, right? Before the rollout, Fujitsu staff had discovered that the system could generate false data. So when they said the computer system can't be wrong, they already knew that
they were lying.
Fujitsu knew there were potential problems. And this is the thing. How much are all of these people talking? Because I feel like if the post office got enough complaints that they would ask Fujitsu, hey, what's going on? And if enough people were contacting the Fujitsu helpline, that they might mention it to the post office and vice versa.
I wasn't sure whether Fujitsu licensed out the product, but still did the kind of the work in the background and just looked after the system. Well, they
definitely were manning the helpline.
Right, okay.
The technical helpline. So they would have been aware of people calling up with these different issues, right? Spoiler alert, there was a lot of phone calls. Some of these people phoned that helpline hundreds and hundreds of times. Okay, so they rolled it out. They knew before it was released that there were problems. That's not shocking. We're so used to beta testing, whatever. That's not
There's nothing to be ashamed of doing testing with
No, you've got to just admit the problems, especially when it's something as serious as this, right? It would create phantom shortfalls. Losses that weren't actually there. So it had bugs, it had errors, and it showed that people, were missing money from their tills, basically. It almost renders it completely useless. The opposite, it makes it a problem.
Yeah, exactly. They wanted to look at the data, so they're getting false data.
So they just fixed it, right? Wrong. So this is before it was released. So you think, okay, yes, this is why you practice and you test it and you do pilot studies and whatever. So, but instead of fixing it, they didn't fix it. And they just said, oh, it's perfect. So I want to talk a bit about the structure that made this possible, right? So sub-postmasters, the people who pay to become licensors, they basically have a franchise of the post office. They're not corporate executives. They're independent branch operators. They're like local shopkeepers. Like I said, the post offices can either be a standalone post office in itself, but you see that rarely these days because it's not financially possible to just have a post office. You normally have to have one or the other, like more than one business that feeds off of each other. So a convenience store that also has a post office desk. So they're local business owners that decide to have a post office, function or whatever, kind of like a franchise. And for those of you not in the UK, we used to have actual post offices, but they're closing down more and more. And now we see that more often, don't we? A post office desk within another business, like at the back of a newsagent. Like I said, sometimes it'll be in a bakery or whatever as well. It can be anywhere in theory, but quite often it's like, in the village shop.
In a place where people naturally would go anyway.
Yeah. So all of these different people were required to submit their accounts through the new Horizon accounting system. If the system showed a shortfall, they were told to make it good. So basically, get that money out of your handbag, out of your savings account, out of your kid's piggy bank, and make up the difference because the fault is yours, whether you intentionally stole from your own business or you've made a mistake, it's your fault. And unless you wanted to go further, just put the money back. There was no meaningful mechanism to dispute Horizon's figures. There was no like, are you sure button or any kind of option to sort of like query something. Like I had an ad rejected on Meta on Instagram recently because it was too political. Because obviously,
I was going to say, did you have your boobs out?
No, it was about Palestine, and so they deemed it as too political because obviously, when our kids starve, it's too political.
Obviously.
Anyways, my point being, even Meta let me have the option, which I didn't bother doing because I was like, "You've made your decision. I'm going to focus on advertising this in another way." But even they had a button that said, query this or appeal or whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't have anything like that. Like, we use our computer software to initially make the calculations or whatever. But if you think there's a problem, you click a button and maybe you have an actual human and an actual human accountant look at the figures and see. It would just literally come up with a message like, the computer says you owe £10,000, explain yourself or put the money back. And remember, this is already at the point where Fujitsu knew that this software could make mistakes. They didn't fix it properly, and they didn't do a thing where people could query it when it did make a mistake. So between the year 2000 and autumn 2013, the post office prosecuted sub-masters in England and Wales using Horizon accounting data as evidence. And this is the thing, it was over many, many years,
Unreal.
And this is probably why it was able to happen. If it was all in 1 year, in 1 year we found, in 1 year, by coincidence, the year we introduced the software, 950 people we want to prosecute.
But then I wonder if they actually genuinely thought all of this fraud was there anyway, and Horizons just highlighted it.
Yeah, maybe. I'm sure they had their reasons. But do you want to hear something bonkers, right? They also prosecuted some people in Scotland and Northern Ireland, but as you know, they have slightly different legal setups. And so it handled itself slightly different. And we'll talk about that a bit later. But this is very important. This is a crucial point. The post office had its own private prosecution powers.
The post office, not Royal Mail.
Post office, because you remember I said the post office is the one that's state-owned. That means they can investigate themselves.
Oh, God.
They can gather their own evidence about the case, and they can prosecute who they want. So that means they are supposedly the victim of all these thefts, the investigator and the prosecutor all at once. What could possibly go wrong?
God's sake. I hadn't realised that. I think I remember seeing something. God, people didn't stand a chance, did they?
No, they really didn't. With this setup, this is what I mean. This structure was a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And if you want to think there's some sort of corruption or cover up or whatever, even without that, something was going to happen like this at some point.
Love a good murder? Come visit me, Isla, at Crimley Good Books in York your one-stop shop for crime fiction and true crime reads, as well as gifts and author events. Or browse online at criminallygoodbooks.co.uk.
Many, like we were talking about, pleaded guilty to false accounting just to avoid prison for theft. And also the amounts, I should say, varied.
Yeah. What's the lowest amount? Like, what are we talking about?
I mean, it would have been significant anyways, but from a few thousand upwards, some people were like, I'm going to take the hit. I want this to go away if I can. I want to be able to, move on with my life. Some of the people didn't notice that there was money missing because there wasn't actually money missing. Some people were doubting themselves. Lots of these people were not tech savvy, so it would be very easy for them to convince themselves and for other people to convince them, you must be making a mistake because
But
you're.
they would also be like thinking that their employees, their loyal employees, were stealing from them. And in small villages, small areas, that's kind of like.
That their accounting skills are out of whack, that they must have been doing something wrong before this accounting system has come in and it's highlighted their mistakes, or like you said, their employees that must have been stealing for them for years, their staff members' honesty, all sorts of things. Because how do you argue against a spreadsheet in court, especially when you're being told that the system is robust, reliable, infallible, which we now know. If anyone told me this computer software is infallible, I think most people would be like, that's bullshit. What I'm more interested in knowing is, what are the possible faults? What are the workarounds for it? Because that's more realistic to deal with problems, isn't it? So there was this fiction of accuracy, this presumption and the starting point that the numbers were correct. Everything, all of these cases were based on that. Years later, the High Court would find that Horizon had bugs, errors, defects, and so forth, and posed a significant risk of inaccuracy. The court also found that Fujitsu could remotely alter branch data without submasters knowing. Let me say that again. Transactions could be altered remotely without the submaster's knowledge, which just feels highly unethical. Not that it was possible, but that it was possible without them knowing. That's the bit that I'm like,
Because that kind of thing. And I remember watching this as part of this documentary or dramatization that I watched. And that seems like such a data protection breach, though, because they could alter figures within a franchise. So Fujitsu could make those changes.
Yeah. And this might seem, I'm thinking of the timing, right? Because I think we live in a world now where someone operating something remotely is a lot less weird to us.
Yeah.
At the time, this was a bigger deal, like a bigger thing, less day to day. It's not even that the sub-postmasters weren't aware that this could happen. When we've had IT support log into your computer remotely to have a look around, you can see it. They've made it clear. You know what I mean? It doesn't happen accidentally or you don't not notice it. The sub-postmasters didn't know that this was a possibility, but also the post office didn't know this was a possibility, supposedly.
I mean, because obviously you'd have to have all these third-party contracts and everything between all the different organizations, because they could potentially have data on individuals, all of that kind of stuff. So they're blaming the individual postmasters when actually they have access to the data. Not saying that they've changed it, but they have access to the data, but they've been saying that the computer system can't be at fault because the postmasters are the ones that have access to the data, when actually Fujitsu do as well.
Because if you're saying the software is infallible and only you have access to the numbers,
it's not true.
Now we know that the software is inaccurate and actually who knows has access to the details. Suddenly the case is falling apart. But also, do we believe the post office in terms of how much they knew about these bugs, how much they knew about whether this software could be accessed remotely, whether they could access it remotely or just Fujitsu? But in 2015, a post office statement denied this capability was later described by the court as plainly wrong. So the post office said, we didn't know that you could do this. And later on, it came out that, yes, they did actually know that the software systems could be accessed remotely. They're pretending Only you, as the sub-postmaster in your village, in your town hall, in your suburb of London, have access to your numbers. So if they're wrong, it's only you. But by this point, when we start realizing or having people admit or confirming that the software was wrong, the post office was covering stuff up, et cetera, lives have been irreparably dismantled and damaged. So a lot of these sub-postmasters, like I said, they lost their businesses. It wasn't just the franchise of the post office. It might have been the larger business that was in. A lot of them lost their homes. Some went to prison. Marriages broke down. Communities turned on them. Sometimes the partners, family members, communities supported them. And other times they turned on them.
Of course. It's just awful.
Because if you're a local postmaster and you're accused of stealing tens of thousands of pounds, people are going to talk. There's no way it's not going to be a topic of conversation in that community.
I mean, just think of all the individual, I think newspaper outlets have their place, and some are completely piles of shit and awful in the way that they do their reporting. But I think that when you've got small communities and villages and towns and even small cities, you'll have individual, the local newspapers and all that kind of stuff. Once they get the sniff of something happening, it will be all these individual little towns and stuff talking about these crimes of the postmaster or mistress or whatever and all this. No one's going to be going, the Horizon system's wrong. They're going to be going, Betty down the road who wanted a new roof done. Oh, she's stolen from her local post office, no doubt, to get her new. Oh, and she's going on a caravan trip. Is that a new caravan she's bought? How can she afford to go away on holiday? All this kind of stuff. And then you'll have people turning up at their houses, can imagine throwing stones at them or saying, "Where's my granny's pension?" or whatever.
Exactly. And it's not just in the villages. Like my local post office, one of the places I lived in a suburb of London. So, very urban area. And this is totally unrelated. And it's a case where actually people at the post office were genuinely committing a crime because I got done for not having vehicle tax. And that's because there was at least two people in this post office that had been, like I said, you had to go in and you had to fill in your form and give your payment details, whatever. They were taking payments for your tax and they weren't putting it through, and then obviously I went back in and they blamed some sort of error, blah, blah, blah. So I wonder actually if they were taking advantage of this notoriety of this case. I don't know. But that was, like I said, a case where they were genuinely, people went to jail, again, legitimately for this.
Because fraud happens and things like this happen. But at the time, money wasn't actually going missing. You weren't having people turning up at the post office going, "I've paid this bill and my council tax say that they've not been paid," or that my granny's pension wasn't picked up. It wasn't that. It was all internal money, though, wasn't it? Yeah. It was just them saying the numbers were out. It was all just numbers, not actual cash.
No one was paying for service they didn't receive, like in this case. But what that did show me was the amount of gossip when something like that, when a trusted member of the community, as we know, we have this all the time on true crime podcasts, when a trusted member of the community, someone in authority or someone with a very crucial part in the community is unethical or has suspicion around them, or there's something going on there or whatever, or there's some sort of potential scandal, people are going to talk about it. So the public inquiry later stated it couldn't definitely prove causation in 13 deaths by suicide, but it did not rule out the real possibility that Horizon-related events contributed. So they couldn't say, yes, these 13 people killed themselves. And like I said, 59 other people reported contemplating suicide. I would put money on that figure being higher, but anyways, and I'm also going to guess that, yes, they asked the sub-postmasters or some of them. I wonder if they asked the question to the people around them, their spouses, their parents, you know what I mean? Because I bet you that they struggled with their mental health off the back of this as well. 10 other people attempted suicide and weren't successful, but were obviously so. And I presume that those people, you could ask them, hey, did this whole thing ruining your whole life? Was that a contributor? So this is what happens when the system says becomes more credible than the human being standing in front of you. And this wasn't one human being. It was hundreds of people saying the same thing. But luckily, there were a few that weren't prepared to be falsely disgraced and penalized. And that number grew and grew and grew. In the background, something amazing was happening. Sub-postmasters started talking to each other. and they formed the Justice for Sub-Postmasters Alliance. Don't actually know, for example, how much interaction and networking there was. I presume there was some kind of like groups of local sub-postmasters, conference, a national conference. I don't know. They formed this group, Justice for Sub-Postmasters Alliance, and one name here, we will hear time and time again, is Sir Alan Bates.
Yay! I got his boot.
Case crush. He led the group litigation against the post office. So there was a warning email, right? Around 2013, during the mediation scheme with the sub-postmasters and the forensic investigation by Second Sight accountancy firm. This was the accountancy firm hired to clear the post office of any accusations, but instead proved that there were discrepancies and faults. It reminded me of Steve Hodel.
Oh, yes. Oh, trying to research his dad, yeah. Oh, shit, he's not.
Maybe he is a murderer, and maybe he's actually a serial killer. This is what happened with Second Sight. So they were having these mediations between this accountancy firm and the sub-postmasters, and the post office barrister circulated an internal email raising serious legal concerns about continuing prosecutions that relied heavily on Horizon data. So this message apparently warned colleagues that prosecuting people based solely on Horizon evidence was risky because emerging information suggested the system might not be reliable. It also said that the organization should review previous convictions that have relied heavily on Horizon accounting data. So basically admitting that there might have been mistakes in previous convictions. Stop convicting people on this data. Look at the people that have already been convicted. And staff should stop routine document destruction or shredding because relevant materials might be required for investigations, litigation, or disclosure. So the significance of this email is that it showed some people inside the post office legal team already knew about the problems with the evidence, the Horizon evidence.
And this was in what year, Dee?
This is years before the scandal fully broke into public view. This is around 2013. Basically, we now know of this email sent in 2013 from someone in the legal team saying, this data is faulty, stop using it, go back and look at previous convictions that used it, and stop shredding documents. Stop shredding the evidence, you know? Critics later argued that this warning demonstrated the post office had early internal knowledge about Horizon evidence and that it might be unsafe. Like I said, years before the scandal actually came out, yet prosecutions and defensive litigation against sub-postmasters actually continued. So even though that email was sent out, it's not like people were like, oh, let's listen to this one person that seems to have a bit of a moral compass. They just carried on as they were. When appeals began to succeed later on, including the mass overturning of convictions by the Court of Appeal of England and Wales in 2021. So basically, there's a whole batch that just got quashed in one go. Documents like this email became important because they showed that the post office already knew that the evidence was unreliable and had a duty to review past prosecutions and preserve documents. So the email, therefore, became part of the larger argument that the scandal involved not only faulty technology, but also serious failures in disclosure, governance, legal oversight. And that's to put it politely, because I would say this is cover up. This is what I mean. It's like, okay, it starts with a software that's faulty, but then it goes on to people lying about the software being faulty. Then it goes on to them saying, well, if there's mistakes, it's definitely not the software, it's definitely these humans. Then it's a bunch of people going, maybe that's wrong. But you know what? We don't want to admit to that. So let's just carry on blaming people that have much less power than us. You know, there's levels. It's an onion, the case. So in 2017, the case matured into a group litigation order. I learned a lot about the law. So it's essentially a collective action. We love peaceful collective actions. And one of the most important internal revelations in the post office Horizon scandal concerned emails showing that these engineers could remotely access and alter branch accounts in the Horizon system.
Right. So how did they get this? Like, this is the bit that how did they find out about this?
First of all, let me tell you that it's something that the post office had repeatedly not just denied, but said was impossible. So during the High Court litigation brought by hundreds of sub-postmasters, a crucial internal message came to light involving staff from Fujitsu. So basically, this and the internal legal email just accidentally came to light.
So was that a whistleblower?
Either it's a whistleblower, someone who just slipped it in with a bunch of other stuff so that it would come out. But listen to this. The contractor that built and maintained the Horizon software was Fujitsu. And an email came out that suggested that Fujitsu engineers could access branch accounts remotely from the central system. They could insert, remove, and adjust transaction data without the sub-postmaster being physically present at the branch. And these interventions sometimes occurred as part of troubleshooting or corrections, but without the sub-postmaster's knowledge, because remember, it's not officially known that this is possible, not by the sub-postmasters and not by the post office, and it's not being admitted by Fujitsu. For years, sub-postmasters accused of theft or false accounting were told in court that Horizon was robust and reliable and that only the person in the branch could change the accounts. So this claim was critical because prosecutors argued that any unexplained shortfall must therefore mean the sub-postmaster had taken the money. The discovery of emails and internal documents showing remote access was possible undermined this whole central argument.
It's not even possible. It happened. It happened.
Exactly.
It's not even theoretical.
But just the fact that it's possible is completely wiping away, like kicking the chair leg out. I don't know the saying. Do you know what I mean? From the argument.
Knocking down their argument.
So these revelations emerged during 2018-2019 High Court group litigation led by former sub-postmaster Alan Bates. In his judgment, the judge, Peter Fraser, found that Horizon did have bugs, errors, defects, in quotation marks. The post office had seriously overstated the system's reliability, and evidence used in prosecutions was potentially unsafe. And the impact was that the exposure of remote access capabilities became a turning point because it showed that discrepancies might not originate in the branch, and that the central premise behind many of the prosecution's arguments was completely flawed, inaccurate, a lie. So basically, in 2019, the High Court delivered damning judgment criticizing Horizon's integrity, and that kind of cracked the door open. So April 2021, the Court of Appeal, like I said, quashed a bunch of convictions all in one go. And the court described the prosecution as an affront to justice. And it found that the convictions were unsafe. And in some cases, there was absolutely no evidence of actual loss, just Horizon generated shortfall. So let that sink in. There's like absolutely no evidence of money missing. No one complaining of money missing, services not paid for, whatever, like we talked about. Just here's a spreadsheet that says there's money missing, so there must be money missing. But the money they were due to receive sounded like a lot until they took off the costs, the legal costs, this, that, and the other, and divided by all those who were wronged. So it worked out to be about $20,000 each, which is absolutely nothing compared to what they were accused of. I mean, that's probably less than what they earned in a year.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure, especially in more recent years.
So it's one of those cases where it's like, okay, they're being offered compensation, but it's almost like a kick in the fucking teeth. That's what you think my whole life is worth, because you ruined my whole life. So more convictions were quashed in 2022. And then something unprecedented happened in 2024. This is how recent this case is still going on. Parliament passed the Post Office (brackets Horizon System) Offences Act. Yeah, a whole law about this case, basically. So instead of waiting for individual appeals, certain categories of convictions were quashed, like en masse again, mass quashing of convictions. So if your case was any one of these different convictions based purely on these spreadsheets from Horizon, out the window, done.
Yeah.
As of late 2025, so like 6 months ago, over 2,000 convictions had been identified as quashed in England and Wales under this legislation. Because we said 950 were convicted, but many of them of multiple charges, which is extraordinary. We don't legislate away convictions unless something has gone catastrophically wrong.
Yeah.
So imagine that that's happening for 2,000 convictions. Like, I can't explain the enormitude of this, you know?
I remember watching something or reading something, and it was a guy whose mum died before any of the quashing. Yeah. And she went to her grave thinking that, and all her friends and like everyone thought she was guilty apart from her family. And like she died, like she didn't commit suicide, but she died and she didn't know that any of this, like she just doubted herself. And like her son was just saying like, I'm so glad that this has happened, but my mum died with everyone hating her. Yeah, it's just so sad.
So most of the in-depth deep research pieces, articles, the books, the dramatizations, the documentaries will pick up on a few, and there's so many to choose from, of the personal stories of how these people, like I did at the beginning with Tracy, when you even hear one of the personal stories and then you think that is multiplied by 950 plus because of all of their family and loved ones and the community members and whatever, that's what is just, I know I keep on saying it, but I can't wrap my head around it. It's mind blowing. It's just so big. So by late 2025, so like I said, only about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, around 1.38 billion had been paid out across various compensation schemes. Like, yes, good. It's only going to go a fraction of the way to actually repairing the damage, but those people definitely earned that money, you know? And remember, this is largely, this money, though, is from an organization providing public services that are still essential and contributing to society. So it's such a shit setup. Like,
and it's such a shame because the post office does provide a service that is so important for the community
that no one else is providing. I know that there are different courier companies or whatever, but the place where you go and get your pensions or whatever. And look, if the post office shut down and went bankrupt and whatever, then the services would pop up elsewhere. But it's not the same as, like, hypothetically, allegedly hating Elon Musk and wanting all of his businesses to shut down. The world would be fine because there's other electric car companies. You know what I mean? It's much more complicated than that. And so is the compensation issue. And it's complicated because there's so many people claiming compensation. Some have accepted fixed sums. Some have challenged the sum. And again, I'm sure there's some people that are like, this is nowhere near going to paying back the mortgage or whatever. So there's lots of reasons why people will accept the sum, will fight the sum, et cetera, et cetera. But legal costs were enormous. There were obviously some support for that. But again, all of these court cases and everything would have put people out of pocket traveling to these court dates, you know, taking the day off work to do that. Like, there's so many.
And please tell me that the people that got compensation, post office were also having to pay all of their legal fees.
I hope that I've got that in my notes at some point. I would imagine so. But, you know, like I said, there's all of the indirect costs, financial and otherwise, from having a long-term court case. And remember, again, these people are now in the public eye.
Yeah.
So they're having things like trolls online. You know, like, there's so much to this that has come off of the back of such an unnecessary situation. So a lot of people, like you said, the money that did come came too late. This woman you were talking about, the people that took their own lives. You can't compensate someone for the years they spent in prison. I don't care whether you give them money for it. You're not going to compensate for it. You can't compensate for the loss of reputation in a small town, even if you get it back. You know what I mean? Even if you're exonerated, even if someone realizes actually wasn't just that you were innocent, it was that a massive act of injustice occurred to you. How'd you come back from that? How'd you see the woman at the bakery knowing that she slagged you off online because she thought you stole money? Like I said, there was loads of people that I read about that moved because they were like, it's not my community anymore. Loads of other heartwarming stories where the community right off the bat was like, absolutely not. There's no way that this person did this. Those are the anomalies, sadly. So there's no compensation for suicide that might have been prevented. So this is the end of part 1. In part 2, next week, I want you to come back. You're obliged to, but I want our listeners, our sexy listeners, to come back.
No, I do.
Because I want to go into the CEO of the post office.
Oh, yes, I want to know about that bitch.
Mm-hmm. I want you to know
Alleged
about
bitch. Alleged bitch.
No, I think
I think everyone knows she's an absolute bitch.
Yeah, she walked away with millions. I want to talk about how that happened. I want to talk about, like, the questions everyone's still to this day asking. Who knew what and when? Because I don't think we'll ever fully know this answer. I think we'll suspect.
Oh, this is a good second part then. Oh, exciting.
I want to get into, like, I gave you the context and now I want to go into the meat, because I also want to go on to the ongoing police investigation, whether anyone will actually be held criminally responsible. Because what have we not heard about yet? You know, yes, we've had people that have gone to jail, but they were the innocent people. Who's going to go to jail for putting those people in jail?
it. This is exciting.
I'm going to go into the fight for compensation a bit more. I want to go into Fujitsu's role a bit more, whether they were forced to pay any of the damages themselves, for example.
Ooh.
And the bigger question, how was this allowed to happen in modern Britain and whether it can happen again? So part 2 is going to be a big one.
Oh, this was so interesting. Part 2 is going to be amazing.
You know, this is a case about post office. You could substitute almost any other business, industry, whatever, into this and change it and tweak it. And it could happen in other scenarios. Unfortunately, quite easily, you know? And it does. We know this. So part 2, please do come along for that. It's going to be the last episode of our season. I told you I was saving this episode until we got more resolution of the cases, some of the compensation and so forth, because I wanted to be able to include how it's progressing. And it's still ongoing, but I can give you some information about that. But I also wanted to leave it to the last episodes of the season because I wanted to end on a big one. And this for me is a huge one. So I think we need
palate cleanser. Oh, is it going to be linked to travel?
Do you say that because the post office also is where we used to go to get our currency exchanged?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's not. But you're not. It is to do with travel of your mail. Because today I've got stamp collecting quiz. I've called it Tiny Squares, Big Money. I feel like you're going to do okay in this. I feel like stamps is something that your partner is a bit interested in.
No, I used to collect stamps. And my uncle used to, well, not collect them, but be interested in.
All right. Well, question 1. What is widely considered the most valuable stamp in the world? Is it A, penny black, B, inverted Jenny, C, British Guiana 1 cent magenta, or D, blue Mauritius? I'm going to guess that those are all very expendy stamps, but which one is the most?
Oh, I'm probably really out of date, but I would go with penny black, but I might be wrong.
That's the one I would have gone for, but...
Is it the second one?
The stamp that is basically the holy grail at the moment is the British Guiana 1 cent magenta, 1856, because obviously there's different years.
Have you got a picture? Oh my God, here it is. 1 cent magenta, regarded by many.
Ooh, it's so cool.
Most famous rare stamp.
It's an iconic emergency provisional stamp.
Ooh.
I don't know what that means, but it sounds cool. It does look pretty awesome. So it's a British stamp because Guyana used to be British. Yeah. And this is of the time it was British. It was a temporary measure when official stamps hadn't arrived yet from Britain.
Oh.
The local printers produced a very small batch, and only one surviving copy is known to exist today. It's a simple kind of ugly magenta stamp with the ship on it, but rarity is everything in the stamp collecting world, as you know. So it's literally one of a kind.
Wow.
It has broken records multiple times at auctions, so it's been sold and resold and traded around. It recently sold for, do you want to guess how much?
I know because I've got it in front of me. So
over $8 million.
Unreal.
So you've got other famous stamps like the penny black, the inverted Jenny that are really rare, very expensive. But this one is literally unique.
I had no idea about this one. Can you imagine if someone found a whole sheet of them?
Yeah. Oh, wait, this? Wait, hang on. I've got 200 of them in my attic.
Right, I'm not going to look at anything else in case it helps me. But I would not have guessed $8 million for one stamp. I would have probably said £1 million.
You've got to fucking love stamps, huh? So, question 2. The penny black of 1840 was significant because it was A, the first stamp with a barcode, B, the first adhesive postage stamp, C, the first stamp printed in color, or D, the first stamp with a QR code. 1840. I feel like you can eliminate some of these. A, the first stamp with a barcode.
So it was first one that was adhesive or first one that was in color. I would say adhesive.
And you would be correct. So it was the first one that had some sort of glue on the back.
Okay.
Or I don't know whether you would lick that stamp, but it was self-adhesive in some capacity. Question 3. Which country issued the world's first postage stamp? Is it A, France, B, United States, C, United Kingdom, or D, Germany?
So you said that, like, all right, no,
Go with your gut.
I don't think it's going to be the UK. I think it's going to be older.
Don't go with your gut then.
I think it's going to be the UK.
Go with that one.
Because you talked about Henry VIII and 1537, first postage stamp.
What was it, 1516? The UK issued the world's first postage stamp, which was the penny black of 1840, and it completely changed how the mail worked. Before this, sending a letter was chaotic. I went to the post office this morning.
And it was bad enough.
So the recipient often had to pay, not the sender.
I'm going to send you some bills. And then when
I'm just sending you a bunch of presents. Oh, yeah, you're going to have to pay. It's like when you order something online and you're like, damn it, customs.
Can you imagine like people hating someone and going, I'm just going to send them a leaf through the post.
Like how everyone's been returning bricks to Reform when they get the Reform survey. Or like we kind of have it here where if I sent you, for example, if I didn't put enough postage on this letter that I sent you this morning, you would get a card saying you've got a bit of post. It's owed this much on postage plus this much on fees. And if you pay this, then you can have your parcel, your letter released to you. But it doesn't tell you who it's from. So you're like,
should I pay it? Should I not?
Because I've had it where it's been like obviously a mess up in some company or whatever. And it's been some post that I would never have paid for.
I wonder how many bricks Reform have got to pick up from the post office.
So for those non-UK listeners, Reform, who we talked about being absolute dicks, they did a thing where they sent out surveys to everyone and they put in those surveys.
How racist are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
How much do you agree with our very racist, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic policies? You know, are we the one for you? But they included paid return envelopes. So you could fill in the survey, put the survey in the envelope and send it without having to pay for it. And that's a great way of increasing responses to a survey and to make it more accessible to people who might have access issues, financial, whatever. What Reform didn't count on was people wanting to cost them a lot of money unnecessarily because they are racist pricks that deserve it. And I'm not even saying allegedly. So what people were doing were putting very heavy things in these envelopes, taping these envelopes to bricks so that Reform would be obliged to pay for the postage, the return postage of these things, which is a beautiful, beautiful movement of peaceful resistance.
It's a beautiful use of the envelope.
And the Royal Mail in general. But what basically was the system before was that the recipient quite often had to pay to receive things. The prices varied on distance and number of pages makes sense because that's like weight. Distance even makes sense too, but like we don't have that now. You have one standard rate.
Unless you use a courier.
Yeah, but the post office, the Royal Mail, it's based on weight and size and then the speed of the delivery, first, second class, overnight, whether you want it tracked and signed for. But it's not like, it's only going up the road. Well, then it's £1. But if it's going to York, then it's £10, you know. And people often found ways around it. So say I sent you a letter and you're obliged to pay for it, but you can refuse the letter and therefore refuse to pay for it. So what I would do is write you a code on the outside, somehow code the envelope. So you get the envelope, you say, I'm not paying for this, take it away. So you don't pay, I haven't paid, but you get to see the envelope and the code.
And the code is basically the message that you wanted to give me.
Because bear in mind, this is pre-phone numbers, phones and whatever. So like maybe we work out a system where it's like, look, I'll tell you what train I'm on in this way, you know, or we'll use like Morse code or I'll draw something in the envelope. You know what I mean?
So funny.
So the penny black, the stamp, was this whole new concept of prepaying for the postage using a small adhesive stamp. So
it didn't rely on the person receiving it paying.
Receiving it, yeah. But also it means that it's not relying on the person receiving it. So suddenly things get lost in the post a lot more. So the key details was that it had the profile of Queen Victoria, which is a design that is plagued stamps until this day. You have the royal family, the monarch on the stamp. So basically there's no country name on our stamps. like there are others. It's just our monarch in the corner. And it used to cost 1 penny, hence the name Penny Black, to send a standard letter anywhere in the UK. So they like standardized, formalized the system, the price, everything. So it made it cheaper, simpler, more accessible. And it was basically the foundation for the modern postal system. So it's like, sorry, I can see why you get excited about it. It's like a whole new world opening up, not just a bit of paper that you put on another bit of paper. So, question 4. What is a first day cover? Is it A, the first envelope ever sent? Is it B, a stamp used on the day it was first issued? Is it C, a Royal Mail uniform? Or is it D, a special delivery van?
Number 2.
Did you know that one, or is it a guess? Because you're correct.
Yeah, because my dad used to collect the first day cover. Like we've got lots of first day covers at home of like the Olympics, like Special Olympics and like the Paralympics and like 2012 and stuff.
So it's basically, like you say, they've got all these different seasonal stamps that are issued and it's posted through the system on the first day that it's issued.
Yeah. So we used to go to the post office, get an envelope, get the stamps for that day, post it to ourselves. That's what you do. You go in and you post it to yourself.
Post it to themselves. Oh,
yeah, so that's how
that
you
is the
get
easiest
it.
way. You don't have to collect it from anywhere.
Yeah, so you just, and we did that with the Paralympics and then Diana as well. It was like something to do with Diana. I don't think it was her death. It was something else. So we got like a few things. I don't know whether they're worth anything or not.
So I'm going to quickly go on to question 5.
Mm-hmm.
What's one of the strangest reasons a stamp might increase in value? A, it was licked by a celebrity. B, it was printed in the wrong color. C, it has a typo. Or D, all of the above.
Oh God, it's going to be all of the above.
Can you imagine being like, this was licked by George Michael. 1 million.
Oh my,
so you did really, really well. I think you got 4 out of 5.
Yay! I'm happy with that.
I'm happy with that.
Do we know what celebrity licked a stamp that's worth money?
No, I don't know, but that can be your homework for next time. Or if anyone knows, please get in touch. If there's ever been a case where a celebrity licking a stamp has increased its value or even made itself as part of the promotion of that stamp, let us know. So I'm going to say goodbye to you and goodbye to our sexy listeners. And I cannot wait to have everyone back for part 2 of the Post Office Horizon scandal.
I'm really looking forward to that.
And I love you.
I love you too.
Bye, bye. I love you. Bye, bye, bye. Bye. Bye.
Like this episode? Want more? Come visit me, Isla, at Crimley Good Books in the heart of York. We're an independent bookshop dedicated entirely to crime. From cosy mysteries to gritty thrillers, historical whodunits to juicy true crime. We've got signed editions, special gifts, and plenty of recommendations for your next obsession. We also host a bunch of awesome author events. Can't make it in person? Visit us online at crimleygoodbooks.co.uk.